Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Semi-Pro Talks done by Semi-Pro Magazine. I'm James Hamilton, as per usual suspects in the studio. Zach right to my left, opposite me, the gorgeous Josh Brewer.
Trying to flirt with me.
Pause. And on the controls, Dan Black.
The ones and twos.
Hello. Let's get straight back into it then, shall we?
Wait.
Whoa.
Right. I want to kick us off this time, right, okay?
Jesus.
Now, we did the interview last week with Max Passantino from Leamington, and there was one part that we didn't address in it. There was one part we didn't address, and this was a question that I asked him, and it was probably the most important question on the podcast, on the interview, sorry. So basically, Max Passantino was talking about his celebrations after the playoff final win. Yeah. On the coach back, and he said quite a lot of the times on the coach back, win, draw or lose, they will always have karaoke's. I want to know what these three's go-to karaoke songs are.
Football podcast, by the way.
Singing karaoke in Blackpool tomorrow, and I've been singing this song. So
Go on, give us a little rendition.
Love Really Hurts Without You. Incredible song. You know, really gets, everyone knows it gets the crowd going. Without you,
baby. James Hamilton.
Wonderwall every time.
Oh,
but you're so boring.
It's a banger.
is that right?
I'm saying bit of Kings of Leon, I think.
Yeah.
I think Use Somebody, though. Not Sex on Fire.
Use Somebody.
Yeah,
That's a real one.
Give us a rendition.
Give us a few beers.
Use somebody.
And then, not that any of you asked, but mine would be a bit of rock DJ Robbie Williams.
You might have seen it on all of our socials, but the boys, I'm gutted, right? Because I wasn't.
I
wasn't able to make it. I wasn't able to make it because of extenuating circumstances. But these boys went to Wembley. Little away day. How'd you get on, boys?
It's cracking.
Tore it up, mate.
Oh, it was.
London's never going to be the same.
I absolutely love Wembley. Our sort of bank account was a bit worse for wear on Sunday morning, but Wembley is nothing better than Wembley. What a stadium! What a place!
And if you haven't seen it, check it out on our social medias.
Yeah.
A couple of us had an excursion into Club Wembley, so I know you said your bank account took a grilling, but some of us got complimentary food, you know.
No one swear on this podcast, are we, unfortunately?
The first game started off very slowly, so actually it was a bit of a derby. It was two Essex teams.
Yeah,
they're
in the same. We were saying they're in the same league.
Yeah.
And which is mental, really, because the
Considering
amount of leagues that are in that pyramid of football, and to have them both in the same league and like within fairly local distance to each other is quite. A lot of Essex accents on Wembley Way.
Yeah,
actually, decent following. I know we might have to get into followings later, but for the FA Vars,
weren't the smallest following.
For the FA Vars, I have to say, very good following from
both Romford and Great Wakering.
Yeah, so well done to them. In fact, we actually got some live audio.
So this is three of the boys at Wembley talking about the overall day, not as much the football, but the overall experience.
Football is secondary.
We're having a right time at Wembley here. It's sort of midway through the second half between Gateshead and Solihull Moors in the semi-finals of the FA Trophy. Currently 1-0 to Gateshead. Zach, are you having a good day?
I've had a great day. I mean, lest we forget, it is Forest Survival Day. Congratulations to all those who celebrate. Yeah, it's been good. Pretty smooth sailing. The Vars, fair play to both sides. Gave it a good go. Pretty decent following, to be honest. I expected probably less than actually showed up. I mean, Gateshead have turned up in numbers, to be honest. Brewer will disagree, but we'll say they turned up. Half decent food. I mean, we found a bit of value in there with a bit of steak and ale pie. So yeah, I'd say overall it's been a good day out. Blacksea?
Getting in at 3 a.m. last night wasn't the best start of the day. 7 a.m. train, sorry. It was actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. A little nap on there. I mean, I've just basically woke up in this match as well, but it's going well. They only do like Camden Ale basically everywhere around Wembley. Not the best from that. Better booze at Hillsborough really, and they only have Carling. Very expensive, but you get some free-loaded nachos in the players' lounge, which 3 of us did, so not bad. Very mission successful really. It's been a great day out. All we've been missing is Mr. James Hamilton.
Right, Gateshead, this is absolutely embarrassing. How the hell are you, as a supposedly Football League club, taking this many fans to Wembley? In fact, I actually support the National League decision for them not getting through to the League Two. It's absolutely embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing.
Oh my God,
And
I'm not putting this on the pod.
I support them not getting through to
no,
the playoff final because it's just... fuck it. I mean, for God's sake.
I tell you what, that has got to be one of the funniest.
It was going so well.
I sound really pissed on that as well. Like.
3 things I'd like to mention from that. Firstly, massive again shout out. I wasn't there, but shout out to all the fans that managed to speak to Semi-Pro on the day. We love to hear your enthusiasm, your passion, all of the clubs. Secondly, what a day out it means for all of non-league. Being able to host it at Wembley, I think that's a massive point that we should go over. And thirdly, Brewer.
I don't remember me being that harsh, to be fair.
That's awful.
I've been waiting a long time to talk about this, and I've calmed down a little bit, right? Having said that, Gateshead. Appreciate that it's a long way, and I understand that you don't have many fans. But this is your big day out. It's a huge day out. You didn't get in the playoffs because of things that maybe, well, they were your fault, but you didn't get in the playoffs. This is your big time. This is maybe your opportunity to go to Wembley and say, well, we've won at Wembley, so, if we were in the playoffs, we could have got there. And to the amount of empty seats, I mean, you're not a big club, fair enough, but, I mean, come on.
Before Platzi absolutely shreds into him, I love how on the pod we've got used to accustomed to absolute silence while Brewer just absolutely ridicules these clubs.
Pretty much.
It's just like let him cook.
However, I am sorry for that because I don't remember being that aggressive.
All I'm going to really do, since I'm in control of this, is we won't cut it, even though it's just an invalid opinion, but we'll just...
Please go on.
That's what I think of that, really. I mean, the trek that the Gateshead fans have made to get to Wembley, and it's not like they was in the playoffs. It's not for a playoff final. They're not fighting for a promotion. It's the FA Trophy. It's such a massive thing still. But overall, I think Solihull were the favourites for the match. They already got the playoffs. They lost, didn't they, anyway?
Surely Gateshead fans, if they're competing with the likes, as Zach says, with Sunderland and Newcastle, and we know what football likes.
I understand that.
The bigger clubs are going to accumulate a bigger set of fan groups. So poor little Gateshead.
But this is your big day out. This is Wembley.
Plus, we discussed this before. They were only made in 1977, was it not? So they're a younger club than Sunderland and Newcastle both already. If you're living around Tyneside up there anyway, then you're going to support Sunderland or Newcastle, especially Newcastle at the time.
I mean, there was basically the same number of Gateshead as there were Great Wakefern fans.
Yeah, but Great Wakefern's what?
They're
half an hour drive?
Yeah, but
one is in Essex.
Gateshead are National League and meant to be trying to push for League Two. We can't be having that in League Two.
But it's like a 5-hour train. Like, trains are spending to get there.
Doesn't matter, it's your big day out.
Oh.
Doesn't matter.
It's your big day out. You get there no matter what.
Poor.
You get there no matter what. It's a fact.
Poor opinions
the
from
fans who
Brewer.
were there, let's celebrate them. They were
No,
there.
I am not having a go.
Shout out to all the Gateshead fans. That
definitely. I am not having a go at any of the Gateshead fans that went. I'm simply saying, for your big day out at Wembley, you come on.
He does not speak for us. Please keep listening, Gateshead fans. Before the game, we spoke to one of the podcasters anyway. For Gateshead, he was a host for Heed Army podcast. Such a lovely bloke to speak to. He was just excited for the day out.
So this week we had a special guest on, 2 actually. I interviewed the managing directors of Enfield Town, one of which, Gabriel, he is one of the youngest managing directors of a non-league club in the UK. So, that was the focus of attention for us. We were really interested in what he had to say. Also of note is that they are one of, or, influencing other clubs in the league as the only fan-supported club. This means that any donations, any funding comes directly from fans and memberships involved within the club. What are your opinions? Do you think we should encourage for more? in my opinion, I think it's brilliant. I think it adds to the community value of what a non-league club is. I just don't know whether it's sustainable due to the amount of funding that comes in. What are your thoughts, boys?
I think the idea of it is perfect, and I think if it was something that's implemented in Germany, which happens through all the leagues when it's like the 50+1 fan ownership of like the clubs, then it's such a brilliant idea, because I mean it works for clubs like Bayern Munich. It works. But if you was going to do it, you have to do it through all steps in England. You can't just do it for these lower down teams, because there'd be such a massive gap between them and the owned clubs anyway.
You make a very good point. The difference between those that are fan supported and the sole funding coming from them only separates the gap between those who have got billion pound investors.
Very ideal aspect. I think every club would like to go down that route. If you can do it, then obviously it's a great thing to have, and then it's always going to kind of promote sustainability, because no fan's going to want to kind of risk putting the club in danger, really.
It's all about like what means more, like on-field success or like off-field good feeling in success. Yeah. Because the fact of the matter is, fan-owned clubs, whilst an incredible idea and a really good feel and good story, you're not going to always be highly successful with that, because of obviously the level of funding, and with like consortiums, hedge funds, etc., they will always probably outspend you on sort of quality of players. It's a brilliant idea, but not a practical one. I don't think it's a practical idea at all.
Yeah.
And also I do think like fans in the long term, when the success like levels out, a bit like AFC Wimbledon have, you know, there's always like a glass ceiling with fan-owned clubs because of the funding. I do think eventually that will, whilst people probably wouldn't admit it, eventually it would grind the fans down because of the lack of on-field success. Because on-field, whilst good feelings, good, on-field success is everything. And I think over time, eventually, it will grind people down.
What I'm going to do for you now is I'm going to play a segment of the interview. Some of them, Ram and Gabriel that I interviewed were absolutely fantastic in answering all of my questions. So shout out to them. Gabe, you're one of the youngest managing directors of a club. Why did you decide to do that?
For me, isn't necessarily kind of part of why I decided to join, or perhaps it was in some respect, obviously to lend a voice maybe from a younger perspective, but it wasn't my kind of primary motivation. The fact that it's a chance to represent your community, to represent your fellow fans in the stands, and to do it with a platform that allows you to have, as the most direct say imaginable in your local football club. Don't have a shadow, the spectre of a vested interest or an owner or or anything like that. So it's very representative. It's the most kind of direct form of democracy, if you want to put it that way. Obviously we're voted on by our members. Again, we're not appointed, so that's another benefit. And it's a really fascinating look, kind of from a personal point of view, into how any football club operates, but especially one at our level. Obviously it has its challenges. We don't have kind of too many external funding sources because we don't have a sugar daddy involved. It's all very much the income from sponsorships and gate receipts. But I think that's pretty transparent as well. And again, people know where their money's going.
The key point I'll pick out is that you're saying that the fans know where the money is going at their club. And we talk about this a lot when we're talking about non-league clubs, is that sometimes where the money is invested is often confused. And that's where we lead into problems with the club, being that they don't understand where the money's being invested in and the progress in which the club's taking. So a really important point there from Gabriel, that the Enfield Town fans know exactly where the funding's going.
First of all, what a guy, and well done to Enfield, like we said last week about getting promoted.
Yeah.
I actually think a great sound bit of that was when he talked about that they didn't have a sugar daddy, and I know he was talking about it in sort of negative and positive ways, but I think that's such a positive thing for a non-league club, because you had obviously people like Billericay and then Glenn Tamplin, you are an awful man, trying to get, you see like sugar daddy and owners trying to get their name in the papers because they've got a massive ego, sort of like throwing money at it, and then when it doesn't go well, like it basically never does, they then shelve that debt onto the football club, and it leaves them on the brink of extinction, almost every single time. Whereas that, you've got fans at the head of it, even at like boardroom level, which basically means, it ensures that the best interests of the club are always at heart. And I know we were talking about there is a glass ceiling in terms of sort of higher up the pyramid with fan-led success, but the success that they had, in the playoffs, and they really dominated that game. I think it was like 3-0. It was like the only game that we were covering that was really never in doubt. And it just shows that the success there, and they definitely deserve it because, like I said, they've spent within their means. They clearly, to listen to the interview, clearly care about the club massively. And I think it is a really good feel-good story there.
I think what we've identified is a difference between maybe some of the teams that are fan-owned, and without going into the high levels of the football pyramid, is that the difference between people who genuinely care about football at the club that they're at and people who see it as materialistic and for profit gain. I think that if you want to take anything from this episode and the interview with Enfield Town, it's the importance of, Brewer had a go at the Gateshead fan. They're turning up. That is so important. That element of being proud. Your relationship with the management and the backroom staff and the players and things like that. Is it that I imagine, I'm going to assume that you're very, very close with all of them. Could you describe your relationship with those people?
Very, very close. I mean, it has to be. It's a working relationship. At a club like ours, we assume the role of the upstairs, if you want to call it that. It helps when they're genuinely good people as well, which they are. People who match your ambition for the club, and match your... Not just your love for the club and your passion for the club, but again, going back to the kind of concern for the club and the fact that they want it to compete. So whereas in very, very easy terms, our job as directors is to make sure that off the pitch we're able to compete. Their job is to do it on it. But it's that's obviously multifaceted, and it means that every single one of them has to do their job, and more than fulfil it. And then boy, have they done that this year.
Yeah, and I think what carries us is mutual respect. Everyone's a volunteer, so that volunteering doesn't come through paying someone to be there. It's done through passion. And what the phrase we like to use is all about fashion, all about passion, not fashion. In fact, calling us volunteers could be quite insulting because we actually put hands in our pockets and put money in. So it's a bit more than being volunteer. We're contributors, and there's tens of us like that. Tens of us who are those kind of volunteers, and they could be people working at the food counter, 4 or 5 people working in the club shop. 4 or 5 working on the pitch. You've got a working party that come in every Thursday, a little bit of painting, a little bit of sweeping up the leaves, fixing anything that's broken, any railings that are broken on the supporter side. Loads of volunteers on match days doing the turnstiles, stewarding. There's tens of people. You're talking about 30, 40, 50 regular volunteers of different levels, different contributions. And it's that mutual respect, and those who can't give their time, like those volunteers do, you probably find they're quite generous people, and that they'll buy a shirt, and they'll buy a shirt for their nieces and nephews in Sunderland or who live in Wales, and they make that a birthday present because they know that one, it's a present, secondly, it's putting money into the club, in an excuse to do so. So a lot of mutual respect which carries us, and of course when we won the playoff final you saw how much respect there was for each other because we were all hugging each other, people you'd never thought you would put your arms around. It was happening, we were hugging each other, and that mutual respect was there in abundance.
Again, it's just, key differences between clubs that are solely owned and fan-based clubs. I'm a big believer in it. Is that there's that mutual respect for everybody at the club, and you know exactly what everybody's doing. You know exactly where's the money going. I think that just makes a huge difference.
Everyone's time's kind of valued, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if most of it's volunteer work. Everyone knows they've got full-time jobs in the day, and giving a bit of their time to a club, I think everyone's going to respect that. And when there's a couple of how many? 10 in a club. Everyone's going to put the hard yards in.
Just say the same again. I mean, they make a point that actually you don't actually see it as much in the actual football leagues as well, when it is that the communication is always there, and that's between owners and like chairmen going down to groundsmen and kitmen and stuff like that. You surely gain so much more respect as an owner from people within, and you're not just working for this guy, you're working with this guy instead, and it's just such a good idea and prospect that you should look for as a business owner altogether, I imagine, but certainly in a football club, because it is, like they said, it is more about the passion. It should be more about the passion than it should be about the money.
It must build a great team spirit in the playing staff and the non-playing staff. It must build a great atmosphere, especially when you're doing well. And I think the satisfaction, you can clearly hear it in their voice, the satisfaction must be incredible of getting promotion, especially in a playoff final. I mean, it must be, they must have just got a great sense of pride, and it shows that whatever they're doing is working.
Last season also, Enfield Town had a journey in the Phoenix Trophy, which is played, and the final was in Italy. And normally when I was talking to Gabe, he mentioned that normally the final of this Phoenix Trophy is played in the San Siro. And we're talking about an Isthmian North or South League team playing at the San Siro in a final. And the pride that you got from his answer there was just,
it's incredible.
We're talking about Enfield Town, right? The club formed in 2001. If I was managing director of a football club, I would make it so that the fans are first, that fans supported. Brewer's looking at me like, if he owned a football club, it's all for him.
It is. I own it. So, no, I wouldn't make it fun. I'd give the fans a seat on the board.
You're saying if you were like the owner of Notts County, you wouldn't make it fan owned?
No. Well, I own it. How can it be fan owned? Give them a seat on the board so they have a say. Of course they have a say. The fans are the most important thing in a football club, but they wouldn't own it. Whoever owns it.
In my opinion, if I was in charge of a football club, I would follow the lead of what Gabriel and Ram are doing at Enfield Town, and make it, the fan involvement has to be, you said it yourself, bro, I said the most important thing about a football club is the fans. In my opinion, they have to be at the forefront of everything.
Yeah.
Club doesn't move forward if the fans aren't. Lastly, can I ask you about, you talk about numbers and you talk about impressions and reaching the national newspapers. What would you say to those in this country who do not understand or are not in the knowledge of the non-league? What would you say to those that are fixated on the Premier League? What would you say about the abundance of football?
I'd say 4 words, give it a try. Stand, obviously, it's more palatable. It's obviously got huge, pulling power in terms of marketing and all the rest of it. And it's very easy in that sense to lose sight of the fact that you've got a myriad of teams. As you say, not only kind of below the Premier League, but below the Football League. We're blessed really in England and Wales to have the abundance that we do in that respect. You can regularly read the kind of comparison in terms of attendances and followings of for example the National League, and the German third tier are relatively similar, and in that sense we're really, really lucky. But in terms of not that on its own is going to convince someone to go along, but I'd say go along. Obviously it's a far more community oriented experience in general, not only helping the community who's hosting the game, but also for you as a fan, right? You're less likely to necessarily to be segregated. Usually you'll be able to enjoy a drink by the pitch with your fellow supporter. It's a lot of what people generalise as how football used to be. I'd imagine that can paint quite a broad picture. It's an experience that's probably more tailored to supporter ideally. You're usually quite close to the pitch as well. And atmospheres, and also the quality of football, which is often, the reason that's cited for people not displaying an interest, really isn't that bad. It really isn't. Obviously, a lot of footballers would have had to have started somewhere. Jamie Vardy and Chris Smalling and Ethan Pinnock and the like wouldn't have come from just anywhere. So just give it a try. I'd say you'll be surprisingly entertained and you'll probably enjoy what it has to offer.
Yeah, I think if you turn the clock back 15 years ago, the Premier League maybe could have absolutely swarmed everyone, swept everyone to one side. I think as football's evolved, prices have gone up in the Premier League and indeed the Championship as well. The coverage now of the Premier League, I mock it as WWE football because it's just blown out of proportion. Everything is magnified to try and make it interesting. When you come down to non-league, I think you'll find it's like how we recognise what real football is. And I'll give a prime example of my wife. She never came out to football, not non-league. I mean, she comes with me to Tottenham because she thinks that's what football's all about. Last year, she came to a couple of the games just to please me, and this year she's been to 3 or 4 games. And under new management, a new style of play, she has actually enjoyed it, and she's been half a dozen times this year. And she compares it to going to Tottenham, and she actually turned around and said, "You know what? I enjoy going to Enfield Town more than I do at Tottenham."
So from there, firstly, a massive shout out to Gabriel and Ram at Enfield Town for showing up time. Once again, your enthusiasm is what makes me want to do this podcast. We live for that. Absolutely brilliant. He says there, and I'll say it again, the difference, he describes it as WWE football. In the Premier League, you're not getting at a non-league. You're getting where it starts from. You're getting the home of football. You're getting pints with your mate at the ground. Contested, passionate, brilliant fun. Get yourself down there. We want you all at semi-pro games.
Could not agree more.
Anyway,
just try it, like you said.
As he says, give it a go. Give it a go. Thank you, Enfield Town. Thank you very much.
What a guy.
And congratulations again.
Yes.
Yeah, well done.
We have had a comment from someone who has been a listener of the podcast, and they want us to talk about what we think on FA Cup replays. Obviously, from round 1, they have been scrapped, and this again is just another Premier League like vote that they wanted, and it did come from the Premier League. Even managers like Thomas Frank, and like he's a Brentford manager, they play less games than anyone else in England. Like they're not in Europe. They don't get into the FA Cup till round 3. They're not in League Cup till round 2. They don't have to play Johnson and Paints Trophy. They don't play 46 games in a season. They play 38, isn't it? So I'm not being funny, but their opinions like that should just not be considered as much as the actual teams that play more football. And bear in mind, these players as well get paid thousands and thousands of pounds more than they do down in the lower divisions like League 1 and 2, never mind non-league clubs. And the damage that it does for the revenue of non-league clubs is a joke, because the revenue that they bring in from FA Cup matches anyway, it's 50-50. So when they get these FA Cup runs, like who was it last season who had the... Maidstone, who made it to... Was it the quarterfinals?
Round 5, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then ended up crashing out to Coventry. I mean, it's such an incredible achievement, and to get rid of FA Cup replays for them and stuff, and like to give them less games in the FA Cups, just getting rid of the revenue. And you see how special it is to their fans. You see how special it is to everyone watching it. Everyone wanted Maidstone to win that game. These clubs are the stories that the FA Cup in particular bring to life in football, and to get rid of FA Cup replays is just such a shame for these clubs when it brings in so much money for them.
I think we're all united in the fact that this is definitely a bad idea.
I mean, what's even worse is I'm seeing I think Newcastle are going to Australia to play a pre-season game 3 days after the season's over.
Yeah.
It's and all the other these made up tournaments abroad for pre-season. But apparently these players need a break or something.
That's such a great point,
joke.
Isn't it? Because I mean, it's like we have pre-season tours. We've now got post-season tours. Just go on holiday. Post-season tours. You can see right through these frauds at the top of the English game that are just in it for money. And it's like Thomas Frank. Great point about Thomas Frank. You're the manager of a League One club that got lucky, because you're manager of a League One club that got lucky. You're lucky you are where you are. You know, you're probably going to get relegated soon anyway. Probably over half of your stadium's full of tourists. I actually feel sorry for the proper Brentford fans that have to sit through that soulless stadium every week of the club that you're managing. You know, you basically play like 40 games. Like you said, play 38 league games. You probably play about...
They play the bare minimum.
Yeah, you probably play about two games.
2 FA Cup
two
games.
Like cup games, you know. EFL clubs, and we're not even getting to non-league who have to deal with postponements, and then at the back end of the season they're basically playing a game every other day.
Yeah.
who have jobs.
Truro City had that this year.
Yeah, who have jobs on the side. These aren't full-time professionals, but you fraud, coming on moaning, and it's like Liverpool. And Wayne Rooney made a good point on Monday Night Football the other week when he was like, Liverpool have just got beat, and then them in the interview, it's not talking about we got beat and we were awful. It's no. We've got to play at 12:30 3 days later. What will they do? What, setting out the Red Cross?
That's it. These are semi-professional players. They have a job alongside this. This is just what they love. And then you have players who get paid hundreds of thousands of pounds and still complain about playing 3 times a week. Some of these clubs have to play 3 times a week every single week because the postponements they have over winter, especially. And it's such a joke, and to see teams higher up complaining about it, and then to even see the FA actually listen to it is a joke as well.
And it's just typical. And it's like, 12 kickoffs. Oh no, you can't spend another 2 hours in your mansion. Just be quiet. It's nothing to do with you. Before we came on the podcast, we was looking at replays and stuff like that. I think having on Waterlooville 2007-8 great cup run. Unfortunately, I was there for one of the games. And got Swansea in the 3rd round, drew with them at the Liberty Stadium, can take them back to their place, and they do them over 4-2. I think it's fantastic. And then what are they rewarded with? A trip to Anfield. It's fantastic.
It's
because,
special.
Let's be honest, if it goes to extra time in that having a Waterlooville game, it's a lot less likely that they're because obviously probably not full-time players, it's a lot less likely. And then they're rewarded with a great trip to Anfield, and think of the money that they get from that. But no, because Thomas Frank's players have got to play at 12:30 on a Saturday. Get a grip.
We know what we think. We want to hear about what you think. Comment, share this, spread it to everybody. We want to know what you think, fans at home. Any more for anybody else before we end this episode? I think you've heard it all.
That's why we right.
We can talk about this
Brew's now
all day.
riled up.
We'll
end the pod here and we'll continue to discuss it. Anyway, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, we're all over socials. Go and find us at SemiPro Official. We've been here. Listen up for the next episode. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for listening.